Blessings, everyone. Hope you are all doing very well out there. We are back with Matthew Stapley, and we are going to be just kind of having a casual chat today. I hope that you're all okay with that. A little bit of riffing. There's a semblance of a theme to the conversation we're going to be talking about, but I will confess, going forward, I did not get much sleep last night. Not a bad night. The energy was super, super high, and I was kind of like feeling really, really good. Again, Matthew, you said you went through a situation like this earlier this week. I was good. I was like in a good mood. I'm like, oh, this is so wonderful. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be shit tomorrow. And so it kind of is just sort of dealing with a bit of a energy, hangover, I guess you could say. But in this video, I wanted to kind of have a frank, very candid chat with you, Matthew, and of course with the audience about navigating gracefully and with care and with responsibility and accountability the matters of mental health as we also go down the spiritual path, right? As magical practitioners, spiritual practitioners, psychic practitioners, because it's no secret, especially this last 14 years or so, going back to about 2008, 2009, the lines have blurred in a very not good way in a lot of different spaces as it relates to mental health and being accountable and being responsible, not just with your mental health but also your spiritual path and practice. You are deep into it. You talk to spirits. You are a medium. I'm a medium as well. You read tarot. I read tarot. I practice magic. You practice energy medicine. What have you observed from either side of the situation with regards to maybe fixing some of the challenges that are going on in this community, especially what have been so prevalent, or even what was allowed to pick up traction, going back in those earlier years, 2008, 9, 10, 11?
Well, you know what? One of the things that I can say that I've enjoyed seeing happen, and this is really like, because if you go back like 10, 15 plus years, there
Mhm.
was that whole ideology that you had to maintain a certain vibration, and the way to do that was by like streamlining all of your thoughts to be super ultra positive. And one thing that I've actually liked seeing, and it's kind of recent in the grand scheme of things, is people being given permission to embrace like the not so nice thoughts and the not so nice, very human, very real experiences that we all have. That's like one thing that I've liked seeing. But even in that, like the ideas of self-care, the ideas of self-healing, the ideas of taking your care of yourself even looks like from a spiritual perspective, at a physical health perspective, at a mental emotional health perspective, there's still so much work to be done in that arena. And one thing that I struggle with is, for example, when people say self-care and then they think of a bubble bath, or things like that, which sure, that can be a part of it, but it can't be all of it. And then another thing that I've noticed that has been a challenge, is getting better, but is still a challenge, is that long running debate of like, is it psychic or is it psychiatric? And this is something that is a question that I get asked about a lot. And my answer is always it can be both, right? We can have an ability that is so strong it becomes an illness. We can have anxiety right alongside our sensitivities, and not
Sensitivities can trigger our anxiety.
totally
you
100%.
know
And this is something that I get asked about like a lot, all the time, really. And one thing that I always like to show people is like, you can be spiritual and sensitive and have a different type of mind, or your brain is wired differently. And because of that, I think that the interventions in mental health are just a smidge different, right? And I'm sure that you would agree with that. It doesn't mean that we walk away from psychology and psychiatry and things like that, but it does mean that we have to incorporate the transpersonal into our plan for management of our conditions, whatever they may happen to be. And so this is something that I would like to see more done on, and I'm holding my breath. How about you? What have you noticed?
Well, I would like to see more of it as well, because, one of the things that I've observed that I feel is probably the most disturbing to me is that, a lot of this world, the magical, the psychic, the spiritual, has almost been in not all circles, of course. We're speaking in very broad terms here, but in a lot of ways, it has become a corner of escapism, which I find, again, disturbing. A lot of this, whether it is magic or it's psychic work or whatever you're doing, this is a martial art at the end of the day. And it used to be that this was a way of life with the intent of complete mastery and complete unity with all of your higher spiritual faculties, your divine faculties.
Mm-hmm.
I find that in recent history, especially, online, it's become a bit of an opiate, an unhealthy substitute or an unsound substitute for real psychiatric or physical health attention. And I think that it's really challenging to have this conversation because, you and I have been very transparent, right? We're both neurodivergent. We're both our own unique flavors of neurodivergent, but we do hold on and keep that in mind. We keep that in mind as we go about our work. When you are running from your own mental differential, we'll put it that way, your own mental differential into the realm of spirituality, and you say something like, well, I don't have OCD. I've just got my Mars in Virgo in the 10th house. And you know what that means? Or I don't have this, right? There is a challenge that comes up with that. Largely due in part to the fact that you're becoming a bit of a drug addict, and your symptoms will only get worse and demand more and more. I think that societally we are hitting this threshold, right? We've gone through so many challenges to collective mental health just with the advent of the internet anyway, and then social media this last 14, 15 years or so, that there is a breaking point that we are hitting now when it comes to how involved we are in each other's state of mind. You've got one half of it where it's sort of people are getting way too involved in each other's state of mind. It's one thing to be conscientious, it's another thing to feel responsible. And then there's the other side of it where there is this demand for a therapeutic experience from the anonymous. We've all been in those spiritual circles, in those classrooms and in those temple spaces where it's like, this person isn't really here to learn or to practice. They're not respecting the art. They're kind of just coming in to soak up more of the opiate experience that they have decided this is. I feel that maybe the reason it's important to have this conversation now is because that is no longer okay. It was never okay, but it's no longer acceptable. It's no longer tolerated. It's no longer an acceptable compromise that I've noticed is being made, which I'm very happy for. But I do know that there's going to be a lot of psychological fallout for it, even if it is for the best.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think the points that you're bringing up are really, really important. And I think, a big part of the problem is that people don't really know what spirituality even is, or how our spiritual ideals or our spiritual practices or our, as you've mentioned, mastery, they actually really it's not just, as you said, about some kind of mystical experience. It's much more than that. And I know from my personal experience that I only fully felt full alignment. I mean, that's an ongoing it's an ongoing unfolding thing, but I got as close to that feeling as possible when I brought into balance like my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, and aligned all of that with my spiritual practices. Because I don't think that we can ignore certain parts of who we are during our quest for truth, right? And if our spiritual exploration is part seeking truth, part developing a deeper relationship with ourselves and the universe, and ourselves in relation to the universe, as well as developing and mastering our quintessential abilities, I think that there are elements of our being that just cannot be ignored. And this is something that always kind of like, I don't know, it's always been like annoying for me when I see these spiritual mastery programs, whatever that is, and they're leaving out all of these incredibly important facets of being, because you cannot be mentally healthy if you do not have some level of physical health alignment. You cannot be spiritually sound if your body is falling apart. I mean, I think that there's elements of separation with these
Yes.
parts of us, but they at the end of the day still all matter as who we are as a whole, because our spiritual path isn't about pulling off one ethereal part of ourselves and, you know, like careening it through the universe. It's about actually bringing an experience to us, or meeting the universe with an experience. And we need to be as aligned as possible on all levels to make the most of that experience. And I think the messaging out there that spirituality is just a little piece of who we are that we should solely focus on is
Mhm.
actually really dangerous. Because one thing that I've noticed in teaching for the last almost 20 years is that when people only focus on that divine connection, their earthly things start to kind of fall apart a little bit.
You go to hell,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, because there's, if even at an energetic, human energy dynamics level, if you get crown heavy, which means that you're only, your consciousness is pointed more at your connection to the ethereal or the universe rather than the physical realm in your physical life, then your lower part of your energy field, which is responsible for like being present and actually having a third dimensional existence, begins to suffer. And this is where you will see a lot of people that have been, working psychically or mediumistically or whatever, start to almost physically fall apart.
Yeah.
And so it's important to actually have like our alignment brought into every layer of our being. We can't just focus on the ethereal if we actually want to achieve that level of mastery. We have to focus on our whole being.
Well, we're because we're the bridge, right? We're
Yeah.
supposed to be a good bridge. And so when this becomes an act of escapism, or I'm just gonna go for it, or an exercise in trying to find a sense of control when you feel out of control, not only are you bastardizing and debasing the process itself, but yeah, you are then deciding to say, screw it. This is no different than, ignoring your job and your bills for your obsession. It's no different than ignoring your physical health for your relationship or ignoring your family for your job. There is something is out of balance.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe one of the things that and I do feel like this is happening, especially in again the online world, is that a lot of the people that were kind of kept down, right? The people who are kind of having real mystical experiences anyway, not having the, let's just say, the psychological euphoria of feeling good, like chasing the feel good feeling, chasing the spiritual dragon, so to speak, are kind of taking back the space
Yeah.
from the, I guess you could say, the sort of mental health opiate trade show that this has been. Again, I feel that maybe it's an important thing to talk about, because I do wonder how a lot of people are going to do when this goes away, as it has been. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. But the big, again, the spiritual opiate trade show is going away. It's already falling apart. People are starting to call out BS practitioners, BS programs, even starting to call out, and I think this is a good idea, holding students and followers and, practitioners accountable, right? We're supposed to be spiritual practitioners, not spiritual passengers. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of accountability coming in. If you are going to be an effective spiritual practitioner and not a passenger anyway, you do need to take care of your physical and mental health. You do need to be on top of that as best you can. There are things that we can override. We don't have to become obsessive about the physical stuff either, right? Because we all know of plenty of situations where people demand a sense of control and distraction, so they obsess about their exercise, or they obsess about what they eat, and so they're running from their past on a treadmill, or they're hiding from their past mistakes in a bowl of kale. You can't do that. The real magical, spiritual, psychic stuff is going to break me if I am not mentally and physically prepared right here.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And even if we look at like, I mean, you're the astrologer. Like I wish I knew as much about astrology as you do. But one thing that I'm good at is feeling the vibration of mass consciousness and feeling where the world is at and where the world is headed. And one thing that I can definitely tell you is that we are moving like through a very intense threshold of energy. Like we are moving dimensionally speaking. I mean,
Yeah.
when people say ascension and all of that, I don't think that we ascend to the fifth dimension. I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me. But what does happen is our entire third dimension raises in consciousness
Yes,
towards
it
a higher
penetrates
point.
these realms and raises
Exactly.
it up. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So we're all moving towards a higher point of awareness. And that's what that is. And the higher you go up vibrationally, the less separation there is. Everything starts to move towards a oneness.
Right.
Now, the process of that is really uncomfortable because human nature is so divided. I mean, we like wars and fighting and reality TV drama, all these things that essentially are the opposite or the antithesis maybe of oneness. And so, as we move through this vibrational transformation, all of this crap comes to the surface, and we have to deal with that in order to transmute it, let it go, so we can continue on as a global journey. And one thing that I can tell you is in the last couple of years, something very profound has started to happen. And a lot of stuff is coming to the surface within society, within the world, and more people are awakening to their sensitivity. And so what's the struggle is with all this is we've got sort of like boutique spirituality that is spirituality that has happened, and then we have a lot of people actually waking up and becoming more sensitive or realizing their sensitivity. And we've got like these two things don't work well together because like this kinder surprise spirituality cannot possibly understand true spiritual awakening. It just can't. It can best guess it, but it can't understand it because it hasn't dived deep enough into what spirituality actually is. And so I think we're going to see, like you said, a crisis in a sense and a fallout. And I think it's going to be challenging. I'm hoping that what people will do as they're moving through this individually and collectively is just focus on building a healthy relationship with themselves and the world around them and seek the tools that would be beneficial for them to do so, whether that is mental health tools or physical health tools or whatever. But yeah, I think at a vibrational at a vibrational level, I think we're screwed for a bit, as a
Well,
society.
I don't think we're screwed anymore. Well, I don't think I'm screwed.
No.
I think I've been screwed.
Yeah.
I think that, same goes for you.
Yeah.
I think the culture is screwed, but
Yeah.
I didn't like culture anyway. So I don't care. It's like tearing down an ugly house to me. What you were saying a second ago, we're talking about tools, mental health tools, physical health tools. I want to take a second to kind of go in that direction for a minute.
Sure.
I've observed, especially again, in the online spiritual world, a lot of people kind of have an adverse reaction to the idea of needing therapy or exploring a diagnosis or taking medication. If a person is taking medication for their depression and it helps them perform, there's so much out there as far as med shaming or diagnosis denial, no accountability. And the reason I'm saying it here is because there are so many teachers and publishers and again fake gurus and the life coach and the luxury condo and the purposeless housewife on TikTok and all of that BS kind of spreading this,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
you're totally right, and there really is a lot of med shaming in both spirituality and religion, actually. Like in both of those communities, which experienced it firsthand. I mean, I was on medication from 7 years old until a few years ago. It was something that I did notice in the spiritual community as well. Like people would say, "Oh, you're holding on to too much," or "You had a past life where this happened," or whatever. And personally, in my healing journey, like I got to some pretty desperate places where I went to every doctor and counselor and witch doctor that I could, a shaman that I could find,
Mhm.
trying to fix myself. And at the end of all of that, I realized that there, at least for me, wasn't anything wrong. It was neurological, not psychiatric.
Sure.
So it wasn't an illness. Um, but the other side of it was that accepting being wired differently was hard, and that in itself has been and continues to be quite a journey. um but even in that, I noticed people saying, even, I think they were trying to be nice, but like, "Oh, do you think that you're such a good psychic because you're autistic?" And I would say, well, like, no, maybe, like, no, I don't think so.
Mm.
I think being autistic makes me very sensitive to things, but I don't think that's the reason why I can see dead people.
Talking to somebody the other day about medication,
Mm,
for instance, and I do not know this experience. I don't have this lived experience. There is no adequate medication for my OCD.
mm,
And I've talked to doctors about that in the past, and they say, look, we don't really treat OCD directly with medication. We kind of go the other way, and we try, if there's a comorbidity going on, if there's maybe depression or something like that, we will go towards that. But there really isn't a good medication for OCD. And because you don't have these other things, I do not recommend even putting you on anything, because it could just make exacerbate things a bit. But I wear glasses, and that's a form of medical intervention, right?
mhm,
Um,
totally.
me going, well, I don't want to wear glasses, or I don't want to wear contacts, or I don't want to get LASIK, because it feels like I'm doing something unnatural to or on or around my body. If
Mm,
I did that and I decided I'm going to go through life without, correction to my vision, getting in my RAV4 and driving around town, I'm going to hurt myself or hurt other people. If
right.
somebody is going to take medication in order to get their mental health out of the way of their spiritual mastery, that should not be shamed. I think that a lot of people maybe they have a bad experience, they have things that they need to heal with regards to their own past when it comes to their own mental health interventions or whatever. That makes perfect sense to me, and I do have a lot of empathy for that. I had a friend of mine recently, who I'm very proud of, by the way, saying like, look, I need to take a step back from being as active and engaged
Mm,
in the spiritual practice the way that he and I were practicing together,
mhm,
because he needed to take care of himself, get grounded again, back off a little bit, because I go places totally sober that are really out of this world. I don't need ayahuasca. I don't need LSD. I don't need mushrooms. I don't judge people who take those things. I've taken mushrooms. I've taken LSD. That was, you don't know 2009 Nico. But the truth is that the courage that it took for him to go, look, I'm not trying to change everything by just meditating and praying and casting and hiding from myself. I'm not trying to fix everything with a spell or a prayer or a ritual, or just tons and tons and tons of tarot and astrology. That is really commendable to me, especially in a time where that in the spiritual online world, that is sort of the expectation,
yeah.
that you will hide from everything and go here and wait for, I don't know, the aliens or Jesus or whoever to come and just sort of like take the reins for you. No, we're the ones taking the reins, but in order to be conduits of those energies or whatever those spiritual energies you were trying to work with, we need to be in good form here. And that includes mental, not just physical, because I'm sorry, obsessing about diet and exercise, we got to come back to that another time. I got a huge problem with hiding from those responsibilities over there too.
Mm. Yeah, no, I totally, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think I think it is very commendable what your friend had done as well, because it can be very intense. I mean, spirituality is not the easier path, but it's in my opinion, it's not an easy path, but it's a meaningful path. At
Yes.
least for me, like my entire quest in spirituality, my entire spiritual journey has been trying to make sense of things and trying to understand why things happen the way they do, and how can we shift our relationship with the things that happen, and how can we shift the things that happen sometimes, and also just develop that closer relationship with divinity and the universe and ourselves, not just um as a human, but as a piece of divinity on earth, and all of that, and mastering the self, of course. And it does get really intense, and there are times, I don't know if you've saw that meme a few years ago of the person, and it said, on the top it said what people think a spiritual awakening looks like, and it was somebody meditating on a mountain, and then underneath it was what it actually looks like, and it was somebody like bawling their eyes out in bed or whatever. you
Mm.
know that's something that I can relate to, because my spiritual journey has often been a little bit like that, of having moments of feeling joyful and connected, and grateful, next to moments of like fix me or finish me, and exploring, deep, hard things sometimes.
Sure.
But yeah, it is very intense. And I think we do have to do our best and do our due diligence to bring ourselves into alignment. And I think you're right. It's not it's not about controlling hyper focusing on controlling of different aspects of our lives, because anything really can be used as an escape, whether it's spirituality or drugs or whatever. I think our approach to ourselves, and ourselves as functional creatures of the world, I think is vital. And I think the way that we view and approach and intend our exploration and our health and well-being is vitally important. I think we need to get clear with our purpose, and not in terms of just our life purpose, but more in terms of our purpose of why we're pursuing anything to begin with, whether it's a spiritual path or a medication or whatever. I think we have to have some idea of what we're hoping to achieve. And maybe that is an issue with the way that spirituality in the new age community has gone in the last 15 years. There's been this idea of exploring these really big concepts in very diluted ways,
Yeah.
without any real direction as to where what the outcome is meant to be, outside of that 1 hour teleseminar or whatever.
Well, I want to come back to that notion of control, because I
Mm,
think that you hit on something very powerful there.
mm,
Because when we talk about things like the new age community, personal development communities, things like that, there is this sort of running theme of control, get control, get control, get control.
mm,
And whether they are spiritual, personal development, authors or schools of thought, or secular,
mhm,
there are plenty of authors and things like that. Um, there's a particular controversial figure um, that comes to mind, where I observe that a lot of their teachings and a lot of their personal development work, and they're very popular, and again, very, very controversial though, but it's all about controlling variables.
mm,
And it's marketed towards people that this is my suspicion, that it is marketed towards people who are neurodivergent.
mhm.
And it seduces them into thinking that they're going to get some kind of control without having to necessarily um, work on the challenges with whatever their neurodivergence is. For
Right.
instance, I have OCD.
Mhm.
Learning to discern, ignore, and manage my intrusive thoughts and exposure response is my responsibility. So if I were maybe in a weaker place, I might be seduced by something that says, you don't have to do that. Here's how you control variables.
Right.
And just like with you,
Yeah.
being autistic, it's hard, right, for a lot of autistic people to say, recognize social cues and facial cues. That doesn't mean you wouldn't try to learn, that you wouldn't try to adapt, to find a system that works for you.
Yeah.
And I think that in a situation where we have been, when you have all of these authors and all of these teachers and things like that, selling the opportunity to control variables versus actually master the self,
Yes.
as well as, going into the realm of spirituality too. Oh, here's how you control variables, just stalk Venus around the zodiac chart, grab an amethyst and hold on for dear life. And it's obviously not working, right?
No.
It's obviously not working for these people, which is why they need to look at 19 different horoscopes a week, or why they need to have $17,000 worth of crystals, or why they keep healing but never being healed, regardless of if they're in a spiritual or secular personal development program. And because the seduction to sell out for a sense of control is there. And I think that I don't know why. I just had to come in there. Have you noticed like my I'm just like, oh, here I come,
No, this is one thing I actually love about you is how passionate you are about everything that you do, which is awesome. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think people are being sold, like with the idea of control or, and it's sad because the whole world feels out of control for most people, right? Like this whole idea of like just do this for 5 minutes a day and you will achieve this. Like I used to feel that way about The Secret, like a lot. Do I believe the law of attraction is a thing? Sure. But do I believe that always trying to get exactly what you want is useful? Not really. I think learning a balance between manifestation and acceptance is really, really important. Anyway, that's again a whole other conversation.
Well,
But
but it does kind of go into
yeah,
a broader discussion of like, well, what are we supposed to be healing with? I mean, a lot of real treatments are antithetical to each other.
yeah,
When we create this idea that there is a one size fits all fix, I mean, the law of attraction in and of itself is one half of one of 12 hermetic principles.
yes, exactly.
So, you're kind of missing 11 and a half more laws.
Yeah,
And yet that is the one that sells because it's easy and it's simple and it makes some people feel good. Actually, the law of attraction has been nothing but poison to to OCD people. It's kind of like, fight your thoughts more. Are you
no,
fucking kidding me?
that is
Um,
exactly why I hate it. Is
yeah.
that people are like responsibility that does not belong on people's shoulders is being placed there, and blame and shame is being placed on these people who have had, sometimes like we can use our crappy experiences for spiritual growth, but we do not necessarily make them happen to ourselves really at all. So like some probably, but
The,
generally speaking, the real tragic things that can happen in our lives generally it just happens. and
it's
and
it's it's neutral alchemy. It's not,
exactly, yeah,
you can't blame it. Oh, I had a bad thought and therefore
exactly,
this happened. The truth of the matter is your thoughts are nothing. They're seeds,
yeah,
they're prompts. Your
totally,
emotions, your energy, your actions, your deeds, what you're putting out there, those all come after the thought and they're more important than the thought.
totally,
And I think that the challenge that a lot of people have in understanding that is that if you look at the way something like the law of attraction is marketed, it's actually well, it's sort of watered down and packaged baseline cognitive behavioral therapy.
yeah, it's true, yeah,
And here's the honest truth of that for anyone who's actually studied psychology. Cognitive behavioral therapy only works for very specific instances when it comes to mental and emotional health. It is not the perfect zeitgeist. It's great for mood disorders like depression and bipolar. It's great for general anxiety. Ironically, though, it is terrible for people with Tourette's, people with OCD. It's actually quite harmful. It works with PTSD, sure, but then you look at these other treatment options that are available that, more people could use, and they're all antithetical to each other as well. Like, for instance, what helps somebody with OCD is actually going to have the opposite effect on what works for somebody with BPD.
yeah,
So what I need, if I'm in the room with a person with BPD and we're both trying to like work our stuff out, we might actually drive each other absolutely insane because we don't belong in the same place working on our issues and healing in that moment. We'll chill out later on, but doing our personal work and going through our issues and trying to create, go through a therapeutic experience, We need to do that separately. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? When you cram everyone together under one umbrella, one personal development or self-help umbrella, you are creating all of this agitation at the same time. And you're going to get me going on a big tangent here, because it's not just the personal development community. You can look at anything. It's a religious community, or maybe it's about your politics or your orientation or your gender identity. You can't cram all of these giant groups together for a sense of belonging and then just rip each other apart.
Right.
But go, take it from me now.
I think with all the things that we talked about, which, my God, I could seriously talk to you forever. Someday we should just talk forever when we're both well slept and, and
Yeah,
well
yeah, on a better,
coffee.
on a much more chill day. I'm
Yes,
loving the mercy
totally.
these lights are affording my dark circles, though. Keep going.
um, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So I think, when we look at all the things that we talked about today,
Mhm.
um, I think there's one element of this that we haven't really talked about, which is why the heck is it happening in the first place? And it's interesting because I think there are some places in people that are predatory, right? Where they're seeing like, oh, like the world is desperate, so I'm going to give them this like little
Yeah,
tool that doesn't work, and I know it doesn't work, and I'm
yeah.
going to sell it to them anyway. So I think there's an element that are predatory for sure, but I think there's also a lot of really well-meaning people, and a lot of people who are trying to figure it all out as well. And I hope, and it's my feeling, that that's actually the bulk of people, is that they're just trying to figure out their own path.
I
um
do, but I think it's so problematic
it is.
to monetize your healing journey before you've actually made enough strides with it. I,
Agreed.
and I think that, getting paid as you go through your own treatment is incredibly selfish to put other people that you say you're serving through. Um, One of the things that, going back to the author I was talking about, and I'll name drop this person after we stop recording. Um, you probably already guessed it, but I have a theory about him in particular. Just observing him and the way he kind of communicates, the way he speaks, again, promising to control variables and all of that. I honestly do feel there is a mixture of somebody who believes that they are helping and somebody who is also looking to dominate and control at the same time.
Yeah, I could see
Um,
that.
because I observing him, I go, I think that you may be that, divergent yourself,
Mm,
neurodivergent yourself. Maybe you're OCD, maybe you're on the autism spectrum, maybe it's a smattering of everything. I kind of think it might be that that's the case for him. And so I think that he's kind of always vacillating, trying to take care of his fish who are out of the water with him,
mhm.
and can't decide, are we going to go find a pond or are we just going to drown the planet? And I think that that is what a lot of these people are doing, because they haven't really figured out what they're going to do with themselves. And so they're kind of treating their customers, they're treating their audience, they're treating their readership as a sounding board. But guess what? That's just the blind leading the blind.
Right. Yes, because they haven't got to a place where they're on even ground enough to even know what they're talking about even works.
Yeah.
So it is true. And it reminds me of like seeing people that are like business coaches that have absolutely no money. like,
Yeah.
or things like that. Like it kind of falls into that realm of things. And I've been that in my life, actually. I was the person that was public speaking on spirituality and acting like I had all of my shit together, and I didn't. And I got the blessing of a nervous breakdown in front of 20,000 people. uh
Oh
not all at once. It's kind of being dramatic, but
my God. Okay.
yeah. but kind of like people, and people who were watching closely definitely knew it was happening. But like building a wonderful social media community, which I am so grateful to be a part of. But they have seen me go through some rough stuff
Yeah.
in the deconstruction, for lack of a better word, of the veneer that I held up for so long. And yeah, I totally, I can relate to it in more than one way. One is I was kind of that person,
Sure.
and two, I've never been happier than when that veneer cracked, even though going through the cracking process was really hard. I wouldn't change it, that's for sure.
Yeah. But you have fun.
I
engaging
do.
people as much
I
as
love
you
it. Yeah, I wanted a job where I could wake up and walk into a party every single day, and you know what? I got it.
That's I
Yeah.
need to see if I could imitate something. I wish I could learn more of that from you. Because when people are like, because you know me, I am so bad at consistent engagement. I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, no, I'm a true introvert. There's a
Hmm.
difference because he and I were having a debate about what introversion was.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, and because he was like, well, how come you never on Discord? How come you never, if you're neurodivergent, you're on Discord. That's just the rule. You know it. And we all have to have one. No, so we're on Discord. And he's like, you're never on Discord. You only show up to sign up for different events like on WoW and things like that. You never talk to anyone. You're never chatting in the lobby. I'm like, I'm an introvert. Like, well, we're all introverts too. And I'm like, no, you're not.
You're like an
Um,
introvert.
yeah, I'm an introvert,
They're,
which means
they're like me. I'm an introvert. I'm an extroverted introvert. Like,
yes.
love to have people around me, but like, let me sit on there staring at my phone. But I love your company.
Yeah.
But don't talk to me.
Well, for me, it's
Yeah.
like I don't want to talk to nobody.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah, you're
online,
like
not in
totally
person. Like
introverted.
just complete introvert. It's
Yeah.
me, it's the cat, it's good. I mean, and so it was just kind of, but I'm also thinking like, okay, I could learn a little bit to be more communicative. I mean, as you've experienced personally with me, I will drop off and disappear.
You definitely go into the hermit cave for a while, but
So
I don't think that's a bad thing actually. And I think that maybe many of us can learn from that as well of like what does it look like to actually unplug for a minute and be within yourself, because that's something that a lot of people don't know how to do. I do now, but I didn't for a long time.
yeah,
But yeah, no, honestly, like I love the community that I get to be a part of every day. They really are amazing people.
yeah,
And they've seen me through hardship. At first, at sidetrack, but at first I was there, just trying to help people and whatever, and get people thinking. And then when I went through my big hardship, I was floored at the support that came from these people. Like, I mean, unimaginable levels that it's going to make me cry if I talk about it. So I'm not going to talk about it, but it was amazing. It
I
was
think that the reason that works for you is because the you do show up in such a way where you are not just putting on a show for
no,
people.
no,
Um, again, for those of you watching, if you saw the last one, remember he does, free readings, he does stuff on his Facebook all the time. I'll leave links in the down bar below again. This is somebody who is regularly engaging, and regularly pushing for a conversation and an ongoing conversation with whoever he is presenting that for. This is not just you're not just watching him on a screen and just sort of witnessing his experience, which in a lot of cases a lot of people do, and sometimes you do it you do it consciously. I do that. I put that barrier there on purpose, but again, you
right.
and I are offering different services.
Yes,
But for you, no, I really do admire the fact that you are somebody who's like, look, I'm only on stage so everyone can see me. If I could do it differently, I would find a way to be able to do this demonstration and just mill about the crowd for an hour and a half, you
yeah,
know?
totally. And yeah, that definitely sums it up. I mean, I do love public speaking and I do like being on stage, but for the reason that you're mentioning, like for me, it's um just about being able to be loud enough, be
Right.
loud enough, I guess. But I remember actually years ago, I remember again, won't name anybody, but I was working with somebody and we were doing a stage public speaking thing, and I remember saying, okay, and like after we leave and we're off the stage and everyone's leaving, we should like run through the back part of this theater and like through the green room and up the stairs and then surprise people and hug them. And the
Yeah,
person I was working with was like, absolutely not.
that would have been me.
He was
That
like,
wasn't me, but that would have been me. I'd have
what
been like, have fun, bye.
I know, but I was like, no, we need to do this. Like, I
Yeah,
want to like actually like be face to face with these
yeah.
people and hug them and thank them for coming. Anyway, but I guess we are all a little bit a little
We're,
different
we're,
that
we're
way.
just different. We're just different. It's
Yeah.
it's good that there are people out there like you. Because if there aren't people out there like you, then it wouldn't be easy for people like me. When we,
That's that's fair. And I like that there are people like you out there as well. I think what you bring to the world is vitally important. I think that you have a really amazing balance between nurturing and sassy. Like you
Mm,
have both of these. And one of my favorite things about you is you have this ability to take really complicated stuff and make it understandable. And that is probably one of the most beautiful things about you, Nico, is that you can take things that would make most people's eyes cross and like their head fall off because it's very complicated and very deep and the kind of thing where to understand one book you have to have read 10 other ones,
mhm.
and you make it so accessible in a good way in a but without it losing its value and its essence and its importance. And this is one of the things that I think I couldn't do the way that you do it. And I think maybe part of why you're able to is because you're introverted,
Yeah.
because you have this um, inner, like a rich inner world. And I think it's what allows you to be so good at what you do. So I think that the world needs both people, both types of people.
It does need both
Yeah.
types. And I think that when we vacillate and we kind of have these pendulous swings between, what's more vital, what's more important,
Yeah.
it's usually it's a debate we shouldn't have. It's
Right.
but it's an impulsive debate that I think comes from very selfish places. If the introverts are saying we should all be introverts, then it's basically an introvert saying, I want to be in an introverted world because
Mhm.
I'm an introvert, right? I'm a fish out of water and I don't want to find my own pond, so I'm going to drown the world. Or if, say for, an extrovert, okay, well, I am a non-aquatic bird in the water, and I don't feel like getting up on dry land, so I'm just going to dry out the ocean. No, these are not debates we need to have.
No.
It takes all kinds.
How do people know like okay, it's the right moment for me to offer what I've learned, or these services, whether they be psychic or healing or mystical or magical or whatever. um
I
I
think we
think
should save that for next time
all right,
because
I think the
I
whole
think that that's a
conversation.
good cliffhanger here. And I know that you wanted to go at 6 year time, and um, you know, I think that we could go on about that for hours.
And I think if I try to do a teaser it's going to be 4 hours long. So
I okay. Well, we'll come back again. We're coming at a time where, I mean, I know this video is going to be hell to edit, but we're coming at a time where it's sort of we've been dealing and dealing and dealing with sleep challenges, and so but no, we can wrap this here. I'm sure this is going to give plenty of food for thought for conversation. I'd love to address any questions that anyone has if they want to leave questions in the down bar below for the next time we come on and record. Matthew's info is in the down bar below. Please check out his Facebook page if you have a Facebook, because again, he does live work all the time. He is so much more active on social media than me. And if you want somebody who is passionate about staying engaged with you and holding on those conversations and even offer, short readings live, this is your guy. And so please follow the links in the down bar below.
thank you.
Of course. You all take care. Thank you so much for dropping by, and we'll see you all again soon.